So at this point, all policies now have some form of communicable disease exclusion on them. It's similar to the terrorism exclusions that you see on all insurance policies now that were introduced since the 9/11 attack. So, the expectation is that these communicable disease exclusions are just going to be like the terrorism exclusion. They're just going to be on all insurance policies for the foreseeable future. So it's just, the new insurance reality. But I guess the question is, well, how does that affect your photography insurance? So most photographers' policies are going to have two components. There's going to be property damage coverage and legal liability coverage. So for a property damage claim to be triggered, there needs to be direct physical loss or damage to property. And it's hard to understand or think about how a communicable disease or a virus exclusion could relate to this, because how would a virus cause direct physical damage to property? And it's worth noting that right now, insurance companies are in court arguing that viruses do not cause direct physical damage, because some people are claiming that contaminated surfaces are physical damage, and they're trying to make claims to their insurance because of this. And so this, it's contentious, it's in court. But for property damage, generally speaking, for most photographers, this COVID exclusion or this communicable disease exclusion is not really going to have any bearing on your coverage. And some people have asked me, like, well, what if I had COVID when I dropped my camera? Or when, what if the thief that stole my camera had COVID? Like, is the coverage going to be excluded? And the answer is no. I mean, it's, probably not. It's hard to draw that connection, right? And then the other coverage is legal liability. So in this case, claims get triggered by a lawsuit that's brought against you for bodily injury or property damage. So in order for this to be triggered, a claimant would have to sue you or your business, claiming that a COVID-related injury or death was caused by your business negligence. And how they would prove that in court is really hard to even imagine when you're in a pandemic and COVID is everywhere. But at this point, even if that happened, all policies have this communicable disease exclusion. So, coverage is excluded. You won't have coverage if someone tries to sue you for getting COVID. I'm sorry. The chances of that ever happening is sort of slim to none. So, COVID and photographer's insurance, the sort of conclusion that we're drawing is that it's not really helpful or harmful, these new exclusions. Doesn't really impact your coverage one way or the other. So it's there, it's like the terrorism exclusion, but it's not really going to change the way the insurance responds. So you might be wondering, well, what are all of these COVID claims then that are driving up the rates and creating these hard market conditions? So, what would be excluded, I guess, is the question. And so there's lots of, claims for life insurance, but the big one is event cancellation. So, Wimbledon famously made an event cancellation claim for COVID. I think the Tokyo Olympics had COVID claims. And there's also business interruption claims. So I do sometimes get this question. We don't have business interruption on our photographers' policies, and probably most photographers' policies won't have it because business interruption is a coverage related to brick and mortar operations. So there has to be direct physical damage to the building itself in order for this coverage to be triggered. And so it's likely that you wouldn't even have business interruption on your policy. And, because there was no direct physical damage to most of these businesses that are claiming for business interruption losses right now, the insurance companies are often denying these claims, or they're contesting these claims in court. So, those are the areas where COVID is really having an impact in the insurance industry, mainly life insurance, event cancellation, and business interruption claims. But none of these really have any bearing on the insurance that is available to photographers.